When 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten went missing, it rocked the whole city of St. Martin's, Missouri. With a population of just over 1,100, it seemed impossible for a small girl like Elizabeth to vanish into thin air. Nobody could predict the outcome, for the truth would exceed everyone's wildest guesses. The Oltens lived on the very outskirts of St. Martin's. Their house sat between green fields and a thick, hilly forest. Growing up in this picturesque surrounding, Elizabeth, the youngest of the Olten kids, was a lively, sunny individual. She was somebody special. They call her a girly girl. She would be outside in the snow or in the mud in her frilly little dress. October 21, 2009. It was Wednesday, just a week before Halloween. Elizabeth was rehearsing a school play, and her mom Patricia was cooking dinner when the doorbell rang. It was their 6-year-old neighbor, Alyssa Bustamante. The little girl wanted her friend to go play with her. The mother let them go on one condition. Elizabeth was to return home by 6 p.m. Patty had nothing to worry about. Her kids always played with the Bustamantes, who lived just 4 houses down. On top of that, the sun would be setting in just an hour and a half, and Elizabeth was terrified of the dark. When 6 p.m. came and went, Patty got seriously worried. Had her daughter lost track of time? With shadows growing longer, Patty grabbed the phone. The call was answered by Emma's grandma, Karen Brooke. To Patty's surprise, Mrs. Brooke told her that she hadn't seen Elizabeth that day at all. Her granddaughter Emma said she last saw her friend walking back home. Patty didn't waste any time. She called the police, and the officers arrived in just 15 minutes. The missing girl had to be found, and quickly.
Because they kept telling me there was no signs of foul play. Like, she didn't just vanish, she's 9 years old.
Concerned neighbors were arriving, forming search groups. Together with the Cole County Sheriff's Department, they started combing the area in a grid search. All the time, Patty was trying to reach her daughter, calling her cell phone non-stop and receiving the same voicemail messages. The police contacted the cell phone company to try another search method called emergency ping. Elizabeth's phone returned 3 pings and went dead. Still, it was plenty. The phone's location was determined. It was the very woods that covered the large area to the east of both the Brooke and Olten's households. The search party started combing the forest. By the time it had gotten dark, it started raining. Even Dave Winninger, a volunteer firefighter who joined in the search, was miserable. There's a lot of rocks, trees, and brush piles. It's a very rough place to be. The search had to be stopped, but the next day would prove crucial to the investigation. On October 22, the search party grew. At that point, the agencies involved included the County Sheriff's Department, Missouri State Patrol, and the FBI. Up to 300 locals alone showed up to join the search, which was over a quarter of the entire St. Martin's population. Soon they came upon their first serious clue. Deep in the woods, a rectangular hole in the ground. It looked the perfect size for Elizabeth. Thankfully, the only thing inside was mud and rainwater. By that time, it dawned on the investigators that everybody connected to the case was accounted for and questioned. Everybody but Emma's senior sister, Alyssa. She wasn't home, so with Mrs. Brooks' consent, the police entered Alyssa's room. Right away, they noticed there was something wrong. Seriously wrong. Alyssa Bustamante wasn't your average 15-year-old girl. Even among her emo friends, few had as many cuts on her hands, few had depression as severe, and nobody had a multiple suicide attempt record. Born into a family of a teenage drug addict and a convicted felon, Alyssa was the oldest of their 4 children. Their father, Caesar, was behind bars and serving a 10-year term for assault. Their mother, Michelle, was either passed out on her bed or absent. The kids were as good as abandoned. Michelle's parents helped them out the best they could, buying groceries and setting up a trailer in their yard for their daughter and her kids to live in. Alas, it didn't help, and Michelle continued with her drug binges. Here is what Gary Brooke, Alyssa's grandfather, had to say about their life up to that point.
Her brothers were like feral children. They wouldn't sleep in beds. They were very wild. They would, punch the wall. At 3 years old, they would punch the wall and make holes in the wall. 3-year-olds, if you can imagine that. And other things like that showed that they had no boundaries and not had any care in their upbringing up to that time.
Desperate, Karen and Gary Brooke took legal custody of the Bustamante kids. By that time, Alyssa was 8, but behaved like a 4-year-old, horsing around and making animal noises. The Brookes had such a hard time dealing with the kids that Karen had a nervous breakdown. To make a change, they got away from the California noise and sun to try and raise the kids in more peaceful surroundings. They bought a modest horse farm and moved to St. Martin's. It was obvious that Alyssa and her siblings had suffered lots of traumatic experiences, but with the adults in their life bringing nothing but pain and disappointments, the kids kept everything to themselves. Grown-ups were the enemy. Still, their grandparents' kindness was working its magic. The kids started going to school. They were socializing and making friends with fellow classmates. Things were looking good, but not for Alyssa. Once, when she was 12 years old, her mother, Michelle, came to visit. The stay was brief, and when she left, Alyssa couldn't stop crying.
We cried together. And for Alyssa, it's her mother, and she loves her, and she's left her again. And I think that in her mind, it was hopeless, that she wasn't going to come back, she wasn't going to get her life together, and she finally had to face that.
It was more than Alyssa could take. She attempted suicide. She was rescued just in time, but it was evident that the kid had severe mental problems. Alyssa was diagnosed with depression and prescribed to take 20 milligrams of Prozac daily. However, it didn't help much. To deal with her grief, Alyssa turned to cutting herself, carving out the words pain and hate. She had as many as 300 cuts on her hands, clearly seen in some of her photos. More suicide attempts followed. She tweeted, "This is all I want in life, a reason for all this pain." But it wasn't purely about masochism. In her YouTube profile, she noted her interests as cutting and killing people. On her own 15th birthday, Alyssa took her best friend, Jennifer, aside and asked a chilling question.
I just wonder what it would be like just to kill someone. See the life just drain out of someone. I wonder what it would feel like, that type of power, to take that away from someone.
When the investigators entered Alyssa's room, they were taken aback. Clothes and other items were strewn around, while the walls were covered with weird drawings and writings. One such text was a poem about cutting, with a line that read, "I cut to see blood because I like it." On the adjacent wall, a crudely drawn figure with slash marks on its hand with the name Emma scribbled next to it. After a brief search, the investigators happened upon Alyssa's diary. Words like kill and burn jumped at them off the pages. Curiously, the last entry was made the day Elizabeth Olten went missing. Using blue light, the investigators easily read the text. "I just killed someone. I'm kinda nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, lol." A week before Elizabeth Olten's disappearance, Alyssa went deep into the woods. She dug out 2 rectangular holes, a perfect size for her brothers, or somebody else. On Wednesday, October 21, Alyssa asked her sister Emma to go fetch her friend Elizabeth. Once the kid was in the woods by their house, she let Emma go. With a tantalizing, "I have something I want to show you," Alyssa grabbed the girl's hand and led her into the thicket. They reached that something in about 15 minutes. It was one of the holes Alyssa dug out just a few days ago. Leading Elizabeth to her doom, Alyssa knew what was going to happen. She had plenty of time to change her mind and turn back, but she didn't. Instead, Alyssa strangled her little neighbor. Then she slit her throat and wrists, stabbed her, buried her, strewing dead leaves on top. She was in control now, not only of her own life, but the lives of others. She got her rush. It was easy. And even if Emma caved in and told on her, who'd believe that little brat? Unable to contain her emotions, she confided in her best friend, her diary. Who'd bother to look there anyway? When Alyssa was brought in for interrogation, she was in for a surprise. Sergeant David Rice of the Missouri State Police told her the police not only found her diary, but also read it to the very last entry. Alyssa tried squirming out of the situation, telling Sergeant Rice that Elizabeth fell, hit her head, and died. She proceeded to add to the lies, saying that she burned the body. Apparently, Alyssa didn't want the police to discover how mutilated it was, but Sergeant Rice pressed on.
I understand you say she fell, and that's why she died. However, they will know from the autopsy if she was shot, if she was hit in the head, if her throat was cut.
Hearing Sergeant Rice mentioning a slashed throat, Alyssa realized the game was up. She started to divulge more and more details until there was nothing left to tell, only to show. Alyssa led the police to the burial site.
She knew exactly, where it was, led us directly to it.
Was it well covered?
It was not well covered. Once she pointed out the area and you looked a little bit closer, you could see that she was only a few inches, if that, under the ground, and you could see body parts that came up, covered with mud. It's a pretty horrifying homicide.
Years had to pass before Alyssa was finally handed her sentence. She was tried as an adult, and on February 8, 2012, she delivered her final statement. If I could give my life to bring her back, I would. I just want to say I'm sorry for what happened. I'm so sorry. But was she? Patty Price, Elizabeth's mother, wasn't buying any of that. She believed Alyssa's lawyers fed her the apologetic lines. Indeed, during the hearing of her case, Alyssa sat impassively, hiding her face behind heavy bangs or staring straight ahead with eyes devoid of emotion. It was only 2 times that she showed her feelings. She cried when her grandparents stormed out of the courtroom, leaving her utterly alone. She shed tears again when the prosecution was making a plea for the judge to give her a life sentence. And that's exactly what she got. Under Missouri guidelines, she would serve 35 years and 5 months before she is eligible for parole.
It's not fair. She shouldn't be sitting in prison. She should die too. I don't care how old she was. Age didn't have anything to do with it. There's no rehabilitation for her.
Alyssa will be remembered as a cold-blooded 15-year-old murderer who took the life of a 9-year-old innocent. An emo thrill killer whose tears were only for herself. True, the adults weren't there for her when she needed serious mental help. Betrayed by her parents, all she got to patch her life with were antidepressants. But stooping as low as to kill an innocent child to get a rush, to satisfy her morbid curiosity, it's a stigma that will stay with her forever.